Hey everybody, Mike Fulsame here, Donna Fox here. We're live. Actually, we're not. This is a pre-recorded webinar. Obviously, we're using Everwebinar's technology to do training for you guys so that we don't have to start a webinar every 15 minutes, 24 hours a day. So what we're going to be going over for you is a deep dive of every feature, every button, every tooltip, everything. It's going to be about 90 minutes. How do we know? Because we just recorded it. And it'll have all the information that you need. And it'll also go deep into some of the strategies and thinking that you want to do before you create your webinar. What are the best times to do webinars? What are the settings we prefer, depending on your market, what settings you want to prefer. So it's not just how to use the software. It's a complete picture on how it may best work for you, our tips and suggestions, but certainly you can use it any way you want. So you're not going to be seeing any chat going on, because we're not live and we don't want to simulate all this stuff. We just wanted to let you know we're using Everwebinar so that you could watch this. But we may have some moderators depending on the times of the day. So if you do have a question, certainly type it in the chat. And there's a great probability that one of our moderators will be there to answer your questions. What I would recommend, if you can, go through the entire presentation. You'll probably see that we answer almost everything, but by all means, if you do have a question, let our moderators know we're there to help you. And so what we're going to do now is we're going to go share our screen. So let's get started. Okay, so now our screen is shared. And as you can see up at the top, it says Webinar Jam Studio and Everwebinar. You want to make sure that you are in the Everwebinar toggle so you can set up your automated webinars. And you'll see in the top left of the screen, it tells you what dashboard you're in. We're in Everwebinar, so we're all set. So Donna, let's show them how this interface works.
So you'll start here where it says new webinar, but we've already created one for you. It makes it a little easier and faster for us to walk through
Yeah, so we don't
this.
have to type in all the descriptions. It'll be quicker for us to just show you when that's created, and we'll just click edit now.
Exactly. So we'll just start here at my webinars and edit. So here's the first configuration page. And what you'll notice on each one of these pages is every one of these blue bars will have a video help button here. You can just click on this and it'll pop up a video help window for that segment. I'll just do it, and then it gives a quick video help for that particular segment. So each one of these, if you've run into any problems, there's video help there. You'll also see these question mark icons. If you click on those, it pops up a quick instruction, just a tooltip about what to do in that particular field. So this video in particular, we have chosen an external video. So there's an external link here. You can also set it up from a previous Webinar Jam session. This is a really powerful strategy here. If you set it up from a previous Webinar Jam session, it preloads everything that happened in your replica replay. And then you can just go through and edit all the different elements. If you want to take some of the lines out of the chat, for instance, you can do that. But it's a great jump start if you've got access to Webinar Jam Studio to record your live presentation in there and then move into an Everwebinar from that.
So there's two things I want to tell people about here. We're going to go a little in depth, but I do want you to know this. Over here, you see that you can use any MP4 file. So that means if you stored it on your own Amazon CloudFront or your own server, or you could use Vimeo, or you could use YouTube. Now, YouTube is very simple to use because you just load it there and they'll optimize it for you. But there's a caveat that we want to warn you. YouTube's terms of service says that we are not allowed to put a layer over the video to stop people from clicking pause and unpause. So we don't recommend that you use YouTube, because once that video is playing, the person can actually click pause on the video in your Everwebinar and scrub backwards and forwards, and it'll ruin the simulation. You don't want that. And also you will notice here, in uploading a previous Webinar Jam session, it's going to pull in the YouTube video. We also recommend at that point that you download that video and then host it somewhere else, and then we give you a place where you can actually put an external URL that's not a YouTube video. So just spend the time reading this. We explain it all here. Again, the whole purpose of this is that we don't recommend that you use a YouTube source video, because it can be paused, and you don't want people pausing and scrubbing and rewinding, because that'll ruin the fact that it's meant to simulate live.
It destroys the illusion.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's also important to put the duration of your video, the exact duration of your video in here. There are a lot of settings throughout the course that we'll talk about that if you just hit 000 for the time setting in the configuration, it inserts the length of the video in it. So if you have the length of the video wrong, it screws
Gotcha.
everything up. All right, the second, I guess, part of the basic configuration is just a basic example of what your webinar is going to be about. So you've got your webinar name here, and this one is just internal use only. If you have any question, you can see right here. Your users won't see this. So this is how you would name your webinar for your own particular reference. You might say, February sales webinar.
Yeah.
You would never call that
Right.
webinar
Yeah. It
that
could
for
be.
your
Yeah. Valentine's Day one-time webinar.
Exactly.
With Russell. Right.
And here you have your webinar title. In this case, you want a headline, basically. You want to keep it in a maximum of 70 characters. It actually won't let you go any further. If you type 70, it'll put a red box right here around the whole frame to let you know that it's too long. But you want a benefit-driven, keyword-rich
How to achieve
headline.
X in Y amount of time.
Exactly.
How to lose 7 pounds in 30 days. How to start your first campaign with Facebook in 30 minutes or less. Something like that.
Precisely. And you have a little bit longer here, basically your subhead for your webinar description. This combination, the title and description, shows up everywhere. It shows up in the webinars on demand if you have it listed in our directory. It shows up in the notifications. It shows up on your registration page. So
Shows up in the emails.
your people will be seeing this all the time. So you really want to make sure it's got, you really want to make sure that it's valuable information for them. It talks about the benefits.
Yeah, you don't want to put webinar with Brendan.
Right,
Yeah,
exactly.
because this is going in the emails when they get a reminder, when they get on the thank you page, when their webinar is about to start. Benefit driven is going to help. All right, cool.
And because it's in our webinars on demand, you want to make sure it's keyword rich so it's searchable. So if people are looking for webinars on sales training and they type in sales training, they'll find your webinar. So you'll see here that if you're in a market where the primary language spoken is other than English, we are translated into 20 different languages at the time of this recording. So there are quite a few options here for you. If you don't see the language of your choice here and you want to donate a translation, just let us know. We're always willing to add some additional translations to the interface. And when you choose a language other than English, it doesn't change the user interface from setup. That will all remain in English, but it does change the experience for your
For the user, yeah. It's all customer-facing stuff like their how much time is left before we begin or the registration buttons. Cool. And here, you may be wondering on Do Not List Your Webinar, why would you not want to have your webinar listed in our marketplace? Well, you may be selling a coaching program, or this may be for members only where you're selling an 8-week coaching program for $1,000. In that case, you want to put don't list in the marketplace because you don't want this to be publicly facing.
Many people use Everwebinar to deliver training. So people will buy a program on another system entirely and our users will send them Everwebinar links. Well, you don't want those to be in the
Right.
public directory because people have paid for that training. So if you do list it on webinars on demand, be sure to choose your category in the drop-down to make it easier for people to find you. We have basically the most popular niches that people use are represented here.
And we're clicking cancel because we already have this stuff
already have
done.
it set up, yeah.
You'd be, of course, clicking confirm. All right, now we're going to get into the meat of this. I can tell I have my mouse backwards compared to you.
I know, every time I'm using Mike's mouse and I'm constantly setting it in the opposite direction.
Yeah, just imagine it's a scroll wheel. So use your finger and pretend you had a scroll wheel up at the top. There you go.
Okay, there you go. So here in our webinar schedules, this is a really powerful interface. There is a lot that you can do. You can pretty much create any combination of scheduling that you want for the user. So the first choice is, ours is scheduled right now for every day at noon. Okay. You can choose every or on a specific day. So if you want it on a specific day, it pulls up a calendar.
On a specific day, as
So
if you were going to
want
do a
on
one-off, one-time
a
webinar.
one-time webinar, exactly. Really, the beauty of Everwebinar is that it can go over and over and over again.
Perpetuate. Yeah.
But it's amazing how many people use it for just a one-time webinar. They use it to deliver content.
It's kind of like where in Webinar Jam Studio you had the hybrid. You want to tell people maybe you're doing a product launch and your product launch is expiring, let's say, on, like we did, December 18th. You may want to say, hey, on December 18th at 5 o'clock, we're doing our last webinar, and people are actually going to register for this and all watch it at the same time, even though it's in a simulated environment. Kind of interesting.
That's right, it is.
Blurring the lines there.
But we recommend you really use the power of the automation and choose an every option. This will occur either every day, every individual day. You can add 5 different schedules if you wanted it every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And then you can choose the time. The interesting thing about this time, so let's say it's every Monday at 1 p.m. It could be every Monday at 1 p.m. in your given time zone or in the user's own time zone. And this is a really powerful feature.
Yeah, so what I want to do now is talk about what is the best way to use this. So this is interesting. So first of all, if you're going to use it as a one-off, I recommend using it at a fixed time, like 5 p.m. Eastern time or 2 p.m. Eastern time. So that way it appears that everybody's watching at the same time and you can get your staff moderating all at the same time. Now, we also we're going to show you a little bit later how you get a link to have your staff moderate. If you do it at fixed times, like Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern, Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern, then you can have your staff just log in for 2 hours twice a week. If you choose these options, where the user uses their own time zone, and you set it for 2 p.m., or as we have here, Monday at 1 p.m., it doesn't matter if they're in Sydney, if they're in Tokyo, if they're in South Africa, or if they're in Hawaii or in the U.S. They're going to see it at 1 p.m., whatever their local time is. So when I load the page, or Donna does here, it's going to say 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, which is really good because in a perpetual environment, what's good about this is that you will be, in most cases, many of you, using this for a global market. You will have people in Spain. You will have people in Thailand. You will have people in Sydney, Australia. And if you set it for 2 p.m. Eastern Time or 1 p.m. as we have here, that could be 3 a.m. in the morning for them, and you're going to get less show rates. But what you want to remember is if they are chatting, you will need 24-hour support of people to be in there, which if you're making money, you can probably spend, I don't know, $25 a day to maybe $35 a day rotating staff, at $3 an hour to do this simple type of work.
Mm-hmm. So in addition to being able to choose a schedule, so let's say you wanted it every day at noon as we have it set up. If we wanted to add every Monday at 1 p.m., just remember to click the button here to add it.
Now, I want to also talk about this, Donna. I think this is the type of thing where people say, well, just tell me what you think is best. So
Right.
If you're a company like Lead Pages, I think you can get away with support trainings for webinars that are every day at noon. Because that seems like something a company would do. They're going to do a training every single day at noon, maybe Monday through Fridays or whatever the case. If you're doing a presentation selling webinar that seems like an event and somebody comes up and they see that you're doing it 7 days a week at noon, it may seem just a little bit odd. Wow, this person is, 365 days a year is just showing up at noon every day. I would probably recommend doing 3 days. I would probably choose Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. Why? I have no scientific data on that, unfortunately. Or even better, as the scientific data that we do have that works very well out of our webinar control is Wednesdays, Fridays, and Saturdays. So we find in the business-to-business niche that doing webinars early at like 10 a.m. Eastern Time and 1 p.m. Eastern Time work better during the day if you're dealing with entrepreneurs. But we find that if you're dealing with professionals, maybe stockbrokers or something like that, they can't be watching the webinar while they're working. So if your market dictates that the people are working, you probably want to set those things to play at evening times. Okay, sorry about that, guys. Got a phone call that came in right in the middle of our recording. Anyway, yeah, just to wrap that up, what we were saying is that depending on your market, you want to decide what time of the day is best to do, whether afternoons or mornings are good for your market or whether you want to do it in the evenings. And then finally, we're going to talk about one more thing that we have tested with many of our clients, and that's what's called the just-in-time scheduler. So Donna is going to show you these next check boxes about watching the replay and just-in-time, etc. But this is where answering all those questions that you have about what's the best time to do it, this is one we definitely recommend you use.
So instead of having to set up a webinar every hour on the hour if they wanted somebody to come in that often, we have this option, this just-in-time schedule, and this is, in my opinion, the most powerful feature of Everwebinar. Just the feedback that we get from it is phenomenal. If you enable just-in-time, what it does is it allows the visitor to your registration page to feel lucky because they got there just in time to see a webinar.
In other words, they open up an email, they click, and they just happen to see, wow, this webinar is starting in 11 minutes. And we have a couple of settings for you where you can set the just-in-time to start either on the hour, so down at the bottom of that drop-down, you see it's every 00. So that probably looks a little bit more realistic, that a webinar is starting either at 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock. Or you could put it where we have in the middle, where the webinar will start at the top of the hour and at the half of every hour. And then finally, if you want it to look like you were just about to get started at 1:15 or at 1:30 or 1:45 or at 2 or 2:15, etc., it's going to reset the timer basically on every quarter of the hour. Now, that's really up to you. Does that seem realistic that, wow, I just happen to be getting started at a webinar that was starting at 12:45? I don't know. I think so. I think, some people might be starting 15 minutes early, or whatever. But the point is, use either the 30 or the 15, 30, 45, and 0. I would say just go for all of them, because what's going to happen is if somebody shows up and you have a webinar starting at 1:15, at the worst case scenario, at 1 o'clock, they're going to see 14 minutes and 59 seconds. Best case scenario, they're going to see it starting in 3 minutes or 2 minutes, and they're going to be like, oh, I can jump right in. Because even if you set it by the hour and somebody says it's starting in 48 minutes, you can get easily distracted. You could go make lunch and then decide to take a break. So we recommend this just-in-time feature just works like gangbusters, and the show rates for webinars go through the roof compared to normal webinars where people have to wait 2 days.
Because it's right there. It starts in 5 minutes or 10 minutes, and they're already in the mindset where they're looking for that information. So they're not going to be distracted. They don't have to set a timer to remind themselves to come back to the site. I think that this is the most powerful, every 15, 30, or 45 minutes. And if you want to make it look a little more natural, set up your schedules here so that you have a couple a day, and maybe you have it start at noon, and maybe the next one starts at 3:15, and then 5:30, and then 7:45. So that they're seeing that.
So the just-in-time looks like, wow, this person's doing a few at a different times. I just happen to get before one started.
Exactly. There's an option to simulate real-world practices. So you hide schedules when you might be sleeping.
I like this. Although we spoke with someone today, Susie, that says they got on a webinar at 3 a.m. and saw that there were 80 people in the room. Worked for her. She was happy.
That's right.
So that's up to you. If you're in a market, again, where you think it's odd that somebody might just happen to be up in those late infomercial hours, reads an email, and sees that you just happen to be starting a webinar at 4:15 in the morning, that just might send off a flag to them that this doesn't work. So we recommend shutting it off at 11 o'clock p.m. at night to 7 a.m. in the morning, because who's going to be doing a webinar at 5:30 in the morning?
That's exactly right. We use both. When we have just a regular sales webinar that's out there making money for us, we simulate the real world practices. We make sure it doesn't show up in those hours. But during our launch, we had it running 24 hours a day. We also had it moderated 24 hours a day during launch.
But this will save you on moderation as well, because now you only have to get people, it looks like about 18 hours a day they'll be working instead of 24.
And you can also change these. So you can really change the time, the start time and the end time for that.
But we think these defaults are pretty good for you.
This is a nice option as well. You can block holidays. So if you've got Christmas was just on Friday, if you've got a webinar scheduled for every Friday and somebody happens to show up at your page on Christmas, it doesn't look like you're doing a webinar on Christmas Day, which is probably a good thing for most markets.
Yeah, and you can go in and add more like the 4th of July or Easter or Yom Kippur or whatever. Certainly, if you're Jewish, somebody might get offended if they're also Jewish and they see that you're doing a webinar on Yom Kippur or something like that. They're going to be like, wow, that person's out there making money, or maybe, whatever the case is. So that's why you'd want to maybe shut that off. And furthermore, to let you know, there are a couple of things that, like Christmas and New Year's that happen, and 4th of July in the U.S. happens the same time every year. There are some holidays like Easter and Thanksgiving that fall on the 4th Thursday or the 3rd Sunday or whatever the case may be. So in that case, you have to go in every year and change that for the 2016, 2017's Easter. Just one thing you might want to remember.
And this is an interesting feature here, the short-term registration. We give you the option of blocking some short-term registration, which means if somebody shows up at your page, you can disallow them to register for today, which means they wouldn't see any of those just-in-time options that we talked about as being powerful. You would use this short-term registration feature if you had some sort of onboarding process that you wanted someone to go through.
Yeah, this is a tough one for me, right? Because what this does is caters to where the world came from doing live webinars before this technology existed. We would do them once or twice a week, usually once a week, and we would have JV partners promote starting on a Sunday for a Thursday webinar, and we wanted to have time to indoctrinate them. And maybe you're carrying over some of that marketing material and it works for you. You're like, it works really well when they see video 1, and it works really well when they read the PDF, and it works really well on day 3 when they take the the self-test and the quiz. The thing with that is that technology was designed for doing live webinars. What we found is that the shorter time distance that you give somebody to register when they can show up, all the way down to the technology of just in time, the bottom line is to get people to show up. So if your goal is to get people to show up, well, it's great that you had 4 days of indoctrination, but it's also 4 days of time where they can forget about it. Donna and I will recommend to you that you use more opportunities to get people to register sooner, and don't block out. In other words, when you do this and it says block today and the next 3 days, if they show up on Monday, they can't register until Friday. That's right. Because you're saying, I want to mail them stuff to remind them to get onto the webinar. And again, that's probably because you have some indoctrination sequences. There's a lot of marketers like Frank Kern that will teach about indoctrination. That's really a live webinar strategy. Our recommendation is don't block any short notice registrations. The key is short notice, we have found, gets them on. The sooner the time from registration to starting the webinar, the better. So that's our take on that.
You know what I love about this system though, Mike? I know that there are people listening to this right now that will be like, it's got to be our way. They've got to get these first 3 emails. They won't be ready. Yeah. They really get the flexibility to do it the way that they want to, but they also get the flexibility to test it and see if there's a better way.
Even better, if you've got like 3 pre-launch videos and your webinar is predicated on the fact that they saw those 3 videos. Now everything I said went out the window, right? Like what we did with the Everwebinar launch, we had these 3 20 and 30-minute videos. If our marketing strategy was to get them to see video 1 on the thank you page, and then day 2 is video 2, day 3 is video 3, and then our webinar starts saying, as you may have seen in the first video that we sent you, then of course you're going to need something like this.
That's right. And we could set it up with blocking a 3-day and setting them through the indoctrination, and then set that whole webinar up and then clone the webinar, change the blocking.
And test it with a just-in-time and see which one makes more money.
Exactly. I bet the just-in-time would.
And there's one we skipped here, the display schedules. Now, this basically allows you to see how many options they get depending on how many options you're giving. So if you're giving Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, you can set this up only to show the next 2. So if they show up on a Monday, they'll only see Tuesday and Thursday. If you let them see 4, they'll see Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, etc. So we have this expression that says, the confused mind says no. Sometimes offering too many options might confuse the customer, but again, this is up to you. Some people, depending on the markets, maybe you're dealing with busy moms, right? And they've got kids that go to school and they're taking the kids to soccer. Maybe in that case, you don't want to block out. You want to give them every opportunity to find out what exact day and time is best for them.
This is an option right here. Don't display any schedule other than just in time and or yesterday's replay is good. Some people like the fact that Everwebinar creates this automated experience that feels like a real live webinar. Some don't like that. Some just would prefer that it just is a webinar on demand. So you can set it up to just show the replay. So if you said don't display any schedule
And then you shut off the just in time.
shut off the just in time, but enabled the replay, now when a visitor comes to the page, they see that there was a webinar and they can watch yesterday's replay. And it's always just a webinar on demand.
Yeah.
So that's an option available for you as well.
Now, my opinion is let the system do its magic. Just don't call it a live event. Just say the webinar event.
That's right.
And this would be my settings. Don't enable registrants to see last night's replay and let them do the just in time. There's a difference that we've tracked in our testing that says that when people are watching a replay, they're just not as engaged. They feel like they're the only person in there. They don't have the sensation for whatever it is that they're part of a live community. So bounce rates, people get in the room and within 5 minutes, they're exiting out like crazy. In a live environment or a live simulation, we find that the room keeps climbing and climbing and climbing. So these would be this don't show the replay based on our testing and just do the just in time. And here I would do, just let them see any slots I have. All right. And so that sets up the first configuration. We'll move a little bit quicker, but this was some of the
We have a lot
tactical
to
stuff.
say.
Yeah, we have a lot to say. So now we're going to go into some of the easier parts, and then there'll be some more complex. So now, Donna, we're showing them what they're going to see in terms of presenters on their registration pages, the little circles of pictures that they'll see when they get into the live room, who's hosting the webinar, who the presenter is, and so on.
That's exactly right. So now we have a presenter option here. And this is our individual presenter. And it doesn't really have to be a real email address here. So you can set it up as a fake email address. The only reason behind this email address is so that you can send moderation emails to the person. So if you're not worried about that, if you're not having a live moderator, that doesn't even have to be a real email address. This picture and this name will appear on your registration pages. So you want to make sure it's a great picture and whatever name you'd like. If you want someone as a moderator only, you would set them up like this, their name, their email address, and click moderator only. That allows you to have different moderators that show up with their name as a moderator. So if it said Donna here,
So in the chat room, they can log in.
Exactly.
They can interact with people that are asking questions. And as you said, Donna's name would then be in the chat room from what they're seeing. But they don't show up on your registration pages, in your emails, or in the live session with pictures or names.
That's right. So we've had, for our 24-hour webinar that we did, we had 2 presenters that showed up on the registration page, but we had 10 moderators because they were working around the clock that were all programmed in here with this moderator only button. So you just fill out their information and then click the add them as a presenter button.
Yeah, and again, if you, look, we recommend having moderators. Donna, you can say firsthand, because you were the first one to test it out for us, that people were asking questions, they were engaging, and they were they were really happy to see somebody there to answer their questions. And then again, as we keep saying, we're blurring the lines between live and simulation, because if they're watching it, and there happens to be another 30 people around the world that started watching it at the same hour, and you're communicating with each one of those people when they're getting a question, and they're all watching it at the same time that it started, what is really a live webinar anyway, other than YouTube streaming a video on that person's desktop playing a feed? So this is important. We recommend, if you have a support team, to have your support team opening this tab. We'll show you how that works a little bit later, where they're just watching, and if something comes in, it's like a real-time support ticket. That's how you have to look at it. If you have a support team, they should be monitoring these pages.
I really have a lot to say, actually, about webinar moderation after that experience. I think I may do a whole video just on that a little bit later in the series.
Great.
So after you set up your presenters, it's time to look at your registration page. And if you click here, you'll see that we have a number of templates associated with the registration page. Every one of the templates includes information on the conversion rate. Now we're on our demo site, not on the live site. So obviously we don't get 109% conversion on this registration page. But in the live system, it will show you the actual conversion rate for each one of these templates.
And you can sort by conversion rate right there. Okay.
There you go.
And do we have the, there's one in the live site. Again, we're in our demo site. So let me just give you a warning on this one. This particular template shows up with some of the highest rates for our users. I don't recommend it. I consider this, I don't want to say something like clickbait, but what happens is all you have here is basically a headline and a call to action button. So you're not really selling or qualifying the person on showing up. It's almost like a subject line in an email. It's easy to, you'll get a good open rate, but what's really important about the email is the body copy in the email. And so my opinion is use some of the other templates that we have here based on their conversion rates, because this particular template, you may not have the highest show rates. Now, I will say if that's the highest one and you're only offering just in time, you might be in the best case scenario. But we just wanted you to keep some of those things in mind, that the more copy you have on the registration page, the more excited the person is going to be to actually attend, because you have a long list of bullets telling them what they're going to be learning.
And the more qualified they'll be.
Yeah.
Really being able to provide information. If you use a template like this one here, where there's a number of bullet points, you can identify your audience there. You can tell them what they're going to learn. They can really make a more informed decision over whether or not they're going to click the button and register, which automatically will increase your conversions overall.
Right.
Sometimes that matters. I mean, it's the old age-old argument: is it the size of the list, or is it the value of the list? And we believe it's the value of the list. I mean, size is good, but getting more qualified people means it increases your conversion rates. And when you have increased conversion rates, that makes you more attractive to affiliate promotions, to JV partners. And it's just better for your email system as well to have a highly targeted email list.
And once you choose your template, you go into a place where you can customize it and put in your headlines, your subheadlines, and each one of these input fields are designed specifically for that particular template. Some of them have a video. You'll see a video link, place to put a video. Some of them don't. Some of them will allow you to add bullets. Some of them don't have bullets. So it really depends.
Some of them have a countdown timer, and others don't. And often there's let me see if I can find which one it is. This one, I think, you have to have a video. So if you click on that one to use it and you don't have a video, then it's just simply not going. Oh no, this isn't the one. This gives you the option. So here's an example where you can choose to display a video. You click the checkbox and put in the video URL. If it didn't have this, if it just said video URL, that would have been a template that requires you to have a video, or else the template breaks. On each one of these templates, where this one has this nice
Cloud background?
Cloudy background, you can select a background image, and if you click on that, you can either upload your own image, or you can choose from a bunch of background images that we have loaded into the system. I have not yet seen anyone use the elephant butt as a choice. Isn't that great? So once you've chosen your registration page, you can also split test the page. So you can enable split testing, and now you can split test either the same design for both your A and B version of a split test. So if you just wanted to split test a headline or maybe the call to action copy, you can do it with the same design, or you can split test two different pages to see which one is working better for you. Finally, you have the option to choose your own design on your own website. If you select this option, instead of it being our registration page, there's a little bit of customization here, but you basically tell us what your URL is that you've got for your page. So if you've set up a page on Lead Pages or ClickFunnels or your own website or
WordPress,
Kartra page or WordPress, you would put that domain right in here. And once you go through the configuration, we give you a button. We give you code for a button to just drop into that website.
Yeah, and we show you that later. Once you click the finish button, then you go to My Webinars and you get your button, and you would just place that right on the page for you.
Also, you have an option of adding a phone number to the registration page. So if you want to collect phone information, you can do that.
Here's what I recommend. Leave that off. Now, this is something that we need to put a little bit more information here for people. They think that this phone number needs to be checked off in order for people to get text messages. It doesn't. That's a completely separate feature. Having the phone number checked here simply means one thing and one thing only. You're asking for that information and it's being passed into the database or into your Aweber or MailChimp. Why would you want to do that? If you're the type of person that has a phone room or somebody that's going to call people at a later date to remind them to get on the webinar or ask them their webinar experience, then you would do that. That's probably less than 1% of you. In my opinion, you don't have need for the phone number to be calling the person, and here's why you want to shut it off. It is going to drop your conversions by about 10 to 15%. People suddenly feel like, oh, wow, this person's going to be following up with me with phone calls. I don't recommend it. Leave it off. Just get first name and email address. And then later, when we get to the thank you page setting up here, you will see that we have a place where you simply check off a box that says remind users with SMS. And once that's done, that's a separate process after they register that says enter your phone number if you want to get reminded. This is not needed. We'll probably put some text here to explain that a little bit better. But now you know.
Okay, now we can go on to notifications. So in your webinar notifications, here is where you set up all of the pre-webinar emails and your post-webinar emails and your SMS and or phone notifications. So we have options here that are preset for you to send 4 messages. We set up 4 of them for you. It's very easy to add them. You just click add the email. So here we have a welcome email already added. Our basic system allows you to send these 4 messages without any edits. Once you log in, if you go to set up your email notifications here, you can put in your name and email address and use our server, or you can use your own server. If you want to add multiple messages, if you want to send more than those 4 that we set up, if you want to make edits and changes to it, you'll need to add your own SMTP server. Now, this is not the SMTP that you might set up so that your Outlook sends to your phone and you get your Gmail.
This is
and
professional
all the same
services
place.
like SendGrid, SMTP.com, Amazon, and Mandrill, I think, is the company that does MailChimp. I think that's their parent company, or their separate company for doing private SMTP. So the thing is, you can go to a company like SendGrid. I think you can get a free account with them, and you just pay per email. And I don't know the rates, but I'm going to say
Their
something.
free
It's like
account's really generous. It's like 40,000 emails a month you can send for free.
for free, yeah. And then after that, I'm making this number up. I think it's like $1 for every 1,000 emails, something along those lines. So it's very, very affordable. We recommend it. Why? Because you're going to have your own dedicated email solution platform. Our service is great, but doing this allows you to add more messages and customize those messages a little bit better. Okay.
And you can choose your SMTP provider here from the drop-down. If you don't see a provider in the drop-down, there's a chance you don't have a bulk SMTP provider. These are the most common ones. If you don't see yours, just contact support and they'll find out for you.
Yeah. And again, SendGrid is free anyway, so you can get 40,000 emails a month. Just get a SendGrid account and plug it in.
It's the easiest. It takes 15 minutes to set up. It truly is just the way to go. So you would set that up. We're going to keep it for our server right now. And the phone notifications, Tropo has a discontinued use, so
We have that there
recommend-
for people that have previous accounts.
Previous
but
accounts, exactly.
Forget that you're seeing that if you're new to our system. In fact, Twilio is a better company
It really
anyway,
is.
and much easier to use.
So you can configure your Twilio account. There's an integration manual to help you.
Step by step, it'll say step 1, get an account. Step 2, get your account SID and your token, and they give all that to you. And you'll just go to your account. You'll find those things. You plug them in right here. Twilio will give you a phone number. It's right on your dashboard page. You plug it in. You hit save for future webinars. You'll never have to do this again. But what this allows you to do is do text, SMS text reminder, email messages, and it will also allow you to set up phone calls where you can just record on your microphone. Hey everybody, it's Mike Filsame and Donna Fox. Want to let you know that the webinar is getting started in 15 minutes. Check your email to get started. You save that recording, upload it to Twilio, and then our API will find that message and allow you to send that little message out to people. And actually, it'll dial them.
Yeah.
It'll dial their number. They'll say hello, and they'll hear, hey, it's Mike and Donna. We're about to get started. Check your email. Thank you. Great feature. We actually don't use that because we're lazy.
Well, that's exactly right. You're exactly right there. I don't think we used the text messages either for the last couple of webinars we've done because we're lazy.
Yeah. And seriously, that's just because we were moving at lightning speed during our launch. That is a feature we will be using. We recommend you use it too.
So if you look at your emails, you click on the pencil to edit them, and you can click on this lab icon to send a test email. So that would send a test email to the owner of that account. Here's what the email editing looks like. We have a number of short codes put in there. So remember when we were talking about the title and description? Those would automatically populate right here, the title and description.
The date and time.
The date and time. In your test email, that the date and the time and the link do not populate.
Hasn't been selected yet.
doesn't
so
exist,
it'll
exactly.
just give you fake tags.
Gives you fake tags. Don't be alarmed. That's the way it's supposed to work. Your test emails, the links will work just fine. And it includes, this is just, it says see you at the webinar.
Mm-hmm.
It is the most basic email possible. You'll want to edit your emails. Now, the first time you do this, when you go to edit your email, there'll be a verification right here at the top. You'll see it in yellow that asks for a cell phone verification.
So if you're wondering why we do that, it's very simple. It's to eliminate people from signing up with Webinar Jam and loading 1,000 to 10,000 emails into our system so that the welcome email sends out a spam message for some stupid get rich quick offer, which people have done. So we verify that you're a real person, and once you do that, a very simple process. We send you a text, you verify some information, and then you could use the system.
And we recommend that you send at least these 4 messages. Just click that to get rid of it. We recommend that you send a welcome message. This is the first time that your individual will get their custom webinar link. So you at least want to send a welcome message. A pre-webinar reminder. This will go out 1 hour before that says we're about to start. The last minute will go out 15 minutes before. If you're using the just-in-time system, they're not going to get these messages. Mm-hmm. So it's important to recognize that you don't want to put...
Well, they might if they do the hour and it's 45 minutes away, right?
Yes. Yeah. If it's less than 15 minutes away, they'll get that. But if it's within the 15-minute just-in-time and they choose that, they won't get it. So you want to make sure if you have really important information, you put it in the welcome message, because everyone will get a welcome message no matter what time they start. So you want to add some, great links or stuff that they want to download, make sure it's in the welcome message. It also, people get confused sometimes in the analytics. When we go and look at, you can look at your email notification analytics, and they'll say, 1,700 welcome messages were sent, but only 300 pre-webinar reminders. And that's because 1,400 people chose.
Right, just in time.
The just in time, exactly. And then here's the post-webinar message. And this starts 1 hour after the start of your webinar. Because we don't know how long people's sessions go, We go based on the start time. So if you've got a 2-hour webinar and you know it's going to be 2 hours, you might want to send your post-webinar message at the 2 hours after, not the hour after. So just be aware of that.
We default that to 1 hour?
We default to 1 hour.
I would default it to, I would tell them to change that to 2.
It's easy enough to change right here, but and you can change this, change it to 2. It's after the webinar starts, so that's the start time. The really nice thing about our post-webinar system is right here. It allows us for some list segmentation based on their actions. So you can send an email to people who attended, to people who didn't attend the live event, and you might send them different emails. Thanks for attending versus, hey, you missed us.
So here's how you want to look at this. Just like we did a call with this this girl Susie today, and she said, I just wanted to get it done to see if it worked. She set up her first ever webinar, and in 3 days she made 10 sales for her $97 product. For her $97 product. And she said, I didn't go crazy with all of this stuff right away. I just wanted to see if what I had worked. So this type of stuff to build out, an email segmentation for people who did attend and didn't attend, we recommend that you do it. But first just jump in there, get your feet wet, get this thing out there, see that it can actually work for you. And then you can go back later and say, okay, now I'm going to write a 7-part email follow-up sequence for people that didn't attend, for those that attended and left early, for those that saw the offer but didn't buy. We don't want you to feel that you have to go out and write all of these follow-up sequences just to get started. You can always come back later and add these things. Just edit the webinar and add more emails.
That's right. I mean, the standard is to all registrants, and it's just, here's the replay. It literally is that, I believe. Here's the replay.
Yeah. And in many cases, that's what we do when we're building them out, just to get them out there. And if we have a winner, we'll go back and say, okay, let's optimize this thing now.
That's right. But you can send different messages to people who attended but left before a particular hour stamp. So if you start your pitch at the 45-minute mark in a sales webinar, and people leave beforehand, they haven't ever seen the offer. So you can send them a different follow-up than you would send to people who watched the offer but then made a decision not to buy. You might talk to those two groups of people very differently. And that's the notification system. All right, so now we'll go on to integrations. Integrations are where you let Everwebinar work with some of the other systems that you may use. So you can integrate an email autoresponder. What this does is it creates co-registration, so that when somebody shows up to your registration page and they're not already on your email list, maybe you put ads out or social media campaigns, when they register for your webinar...
Or joint venture partners mailing for you.
Exactly. When they register for your webinar, they will also get registered for your email list in any of these services.
So let me explain what this is, because people will say, do I need these if I have Everwebinar? I thought Everwebinar sends all the emails out for me. So here's the difference. Everwebinar, consider it to be a campaign-based transactional email system, meaning when the email comes into our system has a job to do to get those people onto those webinars and make sure they see the replays. That's it. You can later export those emails to save them for other use, but Everwebinar is not an email service provider like iContact, GetResponse, Aweber, and MailChimp. MailChimp, Aweber, etc., these companies, what their job is to do is to allow you to email your customers for years and years to come for any reason, whether it be happy holidays, to here's what happened to me on my trip to Aspen, or here's a special offer I have for you for Valentine's Day. Everwebinar and Webinar Jam's purpose is, again, to get that email and remind the person in 15 minutes or a day that the webinar is about to start and that there's a replay available. That's where our function ends. We're not a system that allows you to come in, log in, and write emails for the next 10 years. So what we do for you is allow you to say, well, I have an account with MailChimp, or I have an account with Infusionsoft, or iContact, GetResponse, whichever it is, and you simply click on your provider and paste your, and we have little videos that show you this and these little guides here that show you. So what that means is that when they register for your webinar, the lead is also passed over to your third-party provider like Aweber, so that you can continue to market to that customer that might have come in for this particular webinar, but 2 years from now, you might be inviting them to your new product launch, okay?
Some of these services have even more opportunities for you. So with currently at the time of this recording, ActiveCampaign and Infusionsoft allow you to go a little bit deeper with the integration. So if you click on it, you've got an option for a deep integration. And with a deep integration in Infusionsoft, you can not only integrate for co-registration purposes, but then you can create response tags. And without putting the information in there and connecting, I can't show you the response tags right now. But what the response tags are is, remember in the notifications where you saw you could segment a group based on their activity, whether they attended or not? The response tags allow you to send Infusionsoft tags whether they attended or not. So that allows you a little bit more flexibility for your follow-up. So if you're somebody who's interested in that really long follow-up campaign based on the activity that someone takes during your webinar, you'll want to use some of the deeper integration provided by Infusionsoft ActiveCampaign to do that.
Yeah, so to put this really simple, if you have Infusionsoft and you're looking for it to do tags, you're probably seeking this out.
Yeah.
We have it. If you don't know what tags are and you have Infusionsoft, or don't worry, you don't need it. Our system, we think, does it just great. But there are people with Infusionsoft that come looking for this feature, and ActiveCampaign that come looking for this feature. It's here for you if you're that customer.
That's right.
You don't need to worry about this. Use the simple integration if you don't know what we're talking about.
Here you have the opportunity to embed your Webinar Jam or Everwebinar affiliate link into your webinar pages.
Actually, just Webinar Jam, yeah. All the branding is done for Webinar Jam.
Oh, that's right. That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, because what we don't want to do is brand our live pages with Everwebinar, because then we're telling somebody this is a simulate. So it's
Makes perfect sense.
Yeah, so we're always going to brand Webinar Jam, and if you click the blue link under where it says Deal Guardian, you'll get an affiliate link. It's free to join. You'll get a username. Just pop that username that you create into that little field right there, and then all of the things that in the room that say powered by Webinar Jam, if they click will open up into a new window for the attendee, and when they buy, you get paid a commission. And if you want to leave that blank, just leave it blank.
I don't know why you would want to leave
I
it
don't
blank.
know why you
really.
would. Yeah.
So here under your third-party tracking system, this is if you want a little bit more information about your customer. Again, this works just fine without it.
Yeah, we give you analytics, but Facebook, sometimes it's good to put a tracking pixel that for Facebook for your ads. We give you a custom tracking pixel, and obviously sometimes you like Google Analytics because they give you a lot of data, like what country people are from, what browser they're using, things like that. So we give it all to you.
If you really geek out on data, you'll definitely want to set up your Google Analytics code. And then finally, there are API custom integrations. If you're using a system like ClickFunnels or Lead Pages for your registration pages, or you have a webmaster that's really good at using APIs and can set up API, which is really just a way for one computer program to talk to another. So if you have a need for that, all of your API information is right here. If you don't know what this means, you probably don't need it, and don't worry about it.
Yeah, again, it's if you're using Lead Pages and you want to use their pages, or you're using ClickFunnels and you want to use their pages, and you want our forms to connect on their pages, you would just do that. But we always recommend just using all of our services out of the box. They work great, probably better in many cases. Sometimes we just complicate things, and people want us to make it complicated for them, and we have to answer their requests. Right. It's like, okay, if you want to, we'll do that for you.
That is exactly correct. Let's move on to the thank you page. Our thank you pages are somewhat customizable. They're all encrypted pages because they include a unique link. When someone registers for the webinar, they get a link that is unique to them. So we can't direct to a thank you page of your choice. They have to go to our thank you page because they get that link information.
Exactly. If you want to link to your own thank you page, then put a link in the the editor that
Yep.
says final step, click here, and then send them to a page where you might have an indoctrination video.
Exactly. You can put a custom video into your thank you page.
Here I would recommend a YouTube video, nice and simple. Load your
Yeah.
video to YouTube, get the URL, just paste it there.
Some custom text. There's a basic WYSIWYG editor right here, and here's where you'd put the link to your thank you
Yeah.
page. Please visit us at that sort of information. But
Now,
we've got
we don't allow you to embed any code or anything into there because that's to protect our entire system. People that can embed code can put in hacking JavaScripts so we just don't allow people to embed anything on those pages.
We do have this really nice feature here that allows you to survey your registrants on the thank you page. So if you have a survey set up now, every time someone goes to the thank you page, they have an option to see a choice of a survey.
I would recommend using this even if you don't have a tactical information. Any type of data that you get from your customer about their knowledge of your niche is going to be invaluable to you. So just start out with some questions that say, how familiar are you with the presentation that you're going to be giving? And if you're getting 95% of the people saying, I've never heard of such and such, then you know that you have to slow down the presentation and give more proof of concept. If you're getting 90% of the people saying, I already have an Aweber account, I just want to know how to use it better, well then you just have better information for your presentation. So whatever your niche is, think of some questions that you can ask them. So Donna's going to show you how this works.
Yep. So there are 4 different types of questions you can ask. There's a poll that allows only one answer. So this is an example of it. Do you have an existing business? That's going to be a yes or no question. You're not going to have anyone choose both yes or no. Or there's a poll allowing multiple answers. So this is choose all of your favorite flavors. So we've got a couple of flavors here, and the poll would give them the option to check off all that apply. This is a great example of a question that I would have on every one of my webinars.
Everyone.
Everyone.
Yeah.
What would you like to get from this webinar with the top 5 or 10 topics that you might possibly cover? I would even stack the deck a little and put 10 topics in that you do cover on your webinar.
It's going to give you data that you can go back and change either your registration page or your your indoctrination video or your actual presentation. If as software owners for webinars and we're doing a webinar presentation, if we said something like, what is your experience using webinars? Number 1, I don't know what a webinar is. Number 2, I've been on webinars, but I've never done one. Number 3, I've done webinars, but I found it hard. Number 4, I've done webinars before, and I'm doing very, very well with them. Now, depending on the types of responses I'm getting, I'm going to know the sophistication of my market and how my presentation needs to be. That's what you're going to get from doing this.
It also gives, once your registrant they've registered for the webinar, they've gone through the process, now you get them a little bit more invested by saying, this is who I am. Let me tell you about myself. It gives them the impression that their experience is going to be more catered to them. So they just get a little bit more invested. They're more likely to show up for the live webinar.
Yeah, I think this also uses like a reverse cognitive dissonance, almost like a commitment and consistency. I think you can educate people based on what they have in the survey. So it could be like, how excited are you to learn how to make, how excited would you be to learn how to spend $1 on Facebook and turn that into $5, right? So if the person says somewhat excited, very excited, just by getting them to say very excited, can't wait to I promise to make the webinar. Just something along those lines is a psychological way to get the customer invested just in the poll, just in the promise of the poll. I think so. Think outside the box. Think of different ways that you can do that, as Donna just pointed out.
And you also have the options to have a short answer or a longer answer. So, what color was your first car? And you can leave it open-ended for just a short 1 or 2 word answer. And then tell me about the first time you saw a professional inspirational speaker, I think that says. Then you can write a longer answer and get a story from them.
Yeah, tell me what it was like
start get to knowing them.
when you've made your first sale online, right? And that way, this is data that you can. So the final 2, these are not something that you're going to be able to get snapshot data.
No.
Snapshot data is where you can see, okay, 30% of the people said red, 40% said blue, et cetera, et cetera. Here you can get, they're what's called open-ended questions. So we can't give you a snapshot, so you'll download that and you take the time. It's kind of like getting surveys at a restaurant on a comment card. You're seeing what people are saying specifically, and you're getting more intimate information. And based on that, especially the final one, what was it like the first time? Then these are things that you could copy, paste, and then go back and later put into your presentations. Like, here's what Jim said. The first time he made a sale, he realized this business is for real. I figured out how to crack the code. Now I just need to know how to do it 1,000 more times. Things like that is where you could use this information. Okay.
So once you're done creating your survey, you can, and with your registration page too, I didn't show you, but you can preview the page. So if you click on it, it pops up a preview and shows you what the page is going to look like. So here's what the survey would look like for someone who was taking a look at the survey.
I noticed we don't have the SMS. So is that something that we didn't toggle?
I think I didn't toggle it in this one, yeah.
So let's show that because we spoke about that before.
Which is in the, it's because I don't have a notification set
Oh, because
up
we
here.
didn't
It's
set up
'cause
the
we didn't set up
Twilio.
notification.
Okay, there we go. So if we set up the Twilio, we'd have an option to check off, ask them to receive SMS notifications.
That's right.
In fact, it's not even ask. It's default. Every page will have that.
It defaults.
Yeah.
The page will have it if you have
Yeah.
if you've set up the Twilio. That's
Exactly.
because we didn't have it there. So that was the thank you page, and now on the live page, this is, as they say, where the magic happens. This is where you create a live experience for your user by adding in polls, adding in some chat or some feedback flow announcements. So we'll go through each one of these and tell you what they are. The first is we create interactivity through polls. So you can set up a poll on your webinar. It appears in the right-hand sidebar, just like in Webinar and Jam, and the person has the opportunity to add their poll information, answer their poll, and submit it. Once they do, you get the choice of when to start the poll, or once you set up the question, you have a choice of when to start and end the poll. And you can choose whether or not you want to make the results public.
And in a simulated environment, I think you're going to want to,
Yeah.
because then what's the purpose of doing the poll, because it's simulated anyway.
Right.
So the point is to use this information to say, oh, as you can see, 78% of you said that you're excited to learn about how you can transform blah, blah, blah.
That's right. And this poll information is not saved for you. This is not survey information. So it's
No,
not...
because you're creating the data.
You're creating the data. You're adding
It's a
in
simulation,
here
yeah.
what you want. It's a simulation. The sole purpose of this poll is to create an interactivity.
Now, people are going to be like, wait a second, isn't this misleading? It is misleading if you're using it evil, evilly. Not even so. If what you want to do is use data that you've gotten maybe from your thank you page, or use data that you've gotten from previous webinars, and then put that exact data into here so that it can simulate. Because here's what you got to remember: this is a simulated room. This person is not. They may be watching in Sydney, and they're the only person watching at that particular time. So how are you going to have a simulation where 100 people are putting stuff in real time? It's not happening. So what you want to do is simulate answers that you've gotten either from your thank you page or from a previous live webinar. So yeah, you don't want to use this for evil. Use actual data that you have to support your webinar, so it appears like they're taking the poll when everybody else did.
And if you've built this webinar from a Webinar Jam webinar, your previous poll as well as the responses will be preloaded in here. So you really can base the simulation off of something that happened live. The same is true for your live chat box. If it's based off of a previous Webinar Jam webinar, that whole chat that occurred on your live webinar will show
all
up
going to get
here.
imported in
It'll
here.
all get imported right here, and you'll see every line of the chat, and you'll have the ability to delete any of the lines that you don't want.
Now, what we did for our launch, we never did a live webinar.
Right.
So you and I worked on a spreadsheet to simulate excitement in the room. Hey, I'm here from Australia. Hey, I'm here from New Zealand, and all these different things that we normally see on our live webinars. And you simply clicked import from CSV. I'll just let you.
Whoops. Let me try to type.
That's not me typing, I promise.
Yeah, that's me.
So you can do one-offs, as Donna's showing, and make it appear like it's from a user or a moderator. Was it a question or an answer? But if you have a spreadsheet, it's easier. We tell you the format that you need. There's a time when the chat goes in. Is it a question or chat? Is it from a user or a moderator? And what did they say? And you just type these things in. And what's good is if you see in your presentation, maybe you asked, hey, tell me what niches you're in. If you know from your previous webinars that people say personal development, financing, health, or whatever type of question you ask, you simulate based on what has happened in real world experiences. This was really, really incredible. When I saw how it worked on the webinar that we did, I almost felt like I was watching the webinar happening and people, so many excited people popping in the room saying, can't wait to learn today and things like that.
Yeah, it took a long time to set up. I mean, I'll be clear about that. We wanted to simulate having a lot of people on a webinar.
What do you mean by a long time? I'm curious. 4 hours?
I worked on it for about 12 hours.
Okay.
So,
but
for something that's going to run forever,
yes,
it's,
okay, well
it's
that's great.
hours.
So you spent 2 days working on it, and probably 8 hours if you without distractions and other people pinging on. So,
yeah.
But what my point is, you can do it in a day if you know your beats and what's happening at you go into your at 1 hour and 13 minutes and 10 seconds. I ask, are you excited? So then just put in 30 yeses.
Yes,
you know,
exactly. That's exactly what I did. I listened to the video and I got to the part where there might be
you were
something
really
where
good with it.
would
Like
comment.
you didn't just say 30 yeses. Each one was yes. Absolutely.
Right.
Are you kidding me? This is great. I mean, that's why it took. But man, I thought it was, when I saw it, I couldn't believe what a great job you did making.
Oh, well, thank you.
I swear, I looked at it, I had a big smile on my face, like, this is better than live.
Yeah.
Because everything was catering to the message. There were no trolls. There were no people saying, hey, I just got here late. Is there going to be a replay? Like everything was there to support. It was to support a proper environment.
I was tempted to add that question just because there's always that guy asking about a replay.
Oh, goodness.
So we tell you how to set up the chat file. The good news about this is once you get one done, now I can just add to that one
blocks.
for additional.
Yeah.
I've got blocks. I have 50 people saying, hi,
You have what's
welcome,
called a niche
I'm
blocks,
from.
a where are you from block. I'm excited from. I just
Yep.
purchased. I'm thinking of buying blocks. You have those things that
Exactly.
you could use for the next one.
So you can
Great.
keep using it over and over again.
Oh, we
And
should publish some of those.
I really think we should.
Yeah.
I'm contemplating that. There's also, we were able throughout the course of the webinar as it was running, when we would notice people would have questions, we could go back in and edit and add lines in the chat to anticipate their questions before they actually asked them. So by the end of our
So what you're
48
saying is
hours
because
of webinar.
So listen to this, folks. I think I know what Donna's saying. Moderating the room, after a while, you were starting to see that the same questions were being asked over and over again. So I can go back and I can change the slides, but that changes the minutes and everything. Everything has to be adjusted now. It becomes a new Everwebinar, or we can get that feedback from the moderator and just say, at this time they're asking this question because you simply didn't say, oh, and by the way, we also take PayPal.
That's exactly it.
So you would just go in and whatever that objection was, 30 seconds before they would ask it, you'd put a moderator flag and a feedback flow. By the way, Mike didn't mention, but we also.
That's exactly it.
That's brilliant.
It's so powerful. It cut down on our questions during the live event because we were anticipating them. And we make it
And it's
look
a one-time
like,
thing. You never have to do that again. It's not
Exactly.
not like you're showing up for a webinar every day and knowing that there's going to be live people and you have to type that every time. That's great.
So, and you can set them up as whether or not it's coming from an attendee or an admin, and whether it's a chat or a question. Questions look a little different. They're called out a little bit more in the chat sidebar.
They have a big red icon. Right.
Exactly. So that's kind of cool.
So yeah, Donna, what we can do if we remember, we can just take that document and post it maybe into the Facebook group and just say, write a little post about how to use it. Here are some chunks that you could use for welcome and whatnot.
Yeah, I really think a whole session on how to effectively moderate an Everwebinar is something I feel passionate about. So I'm going to do that. And here you have feedback flow. So just like in Webinar and Jam, feedback flow puts a message over the lower third. So if this is your whole webinar window that they're watching, there'll be a message over the video, just in the lower third of the video, that can pop up anything important. So you can use that for Q&A, like to anticipate a question. You can put a question up there. If you're answering questions in the video, so if through the course of your video you are taking questions from the room in your video,
Right.
you can pop them up on the screen.
Exactly. You don't have to put them in necessarily into a PowerPoint slide because that doesn't look real.
Right.
Right? If you have a pre-made PowerPoint slide that says Jim from Utah asks, but if it's in the feedback flow, then everybody's seeing it. And it looks like Jim from
That's
Utah
right.
just asked a question.
And if Jim from Utah asked it at 8 minutes and 22 seconds, and then at 8 minutes and 28 seconds, you see it pop up on the screen, and then 8 minutes and 30 seconds, you answer it, that looks very real and very natural.
So this is something that you're going to want to remember before you make your recording, that you have this availability to you. So then just make some questions from Jim from Utah, and Jane from the UK asks, is there a guarantee? And then you could later come in, since you recorded it that way, and pop these things in to your feedback flow.
That's right. You have product offers. So in the sidebar, you can open up a product. Here's your product image.
Yeah, real simple. This is just basically when you say, so now if you want to get started, there's a button that just appeared. You will put the information here. You'll give it a title. What time of the webinar do you tell them to buy? Load your image of your logo or leave it blank. And what do you want to say on the button? And what is the link to your shopping cart? That would be right down here for them. This is where they would go. Always open it in a new tab. I don't even know why we asked that, to be honest with you.
That's right.
I can't imagine telling somebody to click and losing the webinar, but that's the way we program it. So always make it sure it opens in a new tab.
You can apply urgency, which gives you a countdown timer. So if you have that selected, oops, I'm still doing it, you can expire and say the offer expires in 10 minutes. What the interesting thing about this offer is, when we call it an offer, but really you can use it anytime you want to give them supplemental information, show them a web page. It doesn't have to say buy now.
It's actually,
it could say download this
download
PDF.
a PDF, right, exactly.
Visit my website, join my membership.
Opt in for a free report.
Like
any place
my Facebook page.
Any place you want to send them.
It's truly a call to action. But
bonuses. Hey, I promised you guys bonuses. Just click this button and you'll get the 3 zip file to my 3 videos. Whatever you want it to be. Like Donna said, a call to action button.
you can choose when to start it and when to end it. The only thing you can't do is show more than one at the same time. So make sure you end one before you start the next one.
And our system stacks them for you so you can see that.
And the next is a redirect.
Why not? At the end of the webinar, when it's done, why let them just see a blank screen? Just always, if you know that your webinar is a certain point, as soon as your video says, all right, everybody, that's the end of the webinar, we'll see you on the other side. So if you know your webinar is 1 hour, 37 minutes and 10 seconds, at 1 hour, 37 minutes and 11 seconds, put your shopping cart URL and redirect them. I don't like to do it in a new tab. I like to, at this point, I shut
this one, turn this one off for sure.
Exactly.
This and the affiliate link are two features that I don't understand why people don't use.
Yeah.
Truly, because this is more powerful than anything. Because if someone walks away from your webinar and leaves that page open, comes back
Think
later,
about what Donna's saying. Somebody gets distracted. Hey, honey, can you please help me bring the groceries in? And then you get distracted. Whatever, you had to go pick the kids up at school. Whatever the case is that brought the person away from their computer. When they come back, why should they see this webinar is over?
Right.
Why not have a page which is like a mini sales page? Has a video recap, testimonials, payment plan options, all those different things where you can send people to buy.
Yeah,
Gotta use it.
Do the smart thing with the traffic. No?
Sticky messages.
Sticky messages are great. Sticky messages sit at the top of your chat box. So they're messages from the admin. So in a live webinar, you might give them information about how to raise their hand to participate. In an automated webinar, you might give them information about how to buy, put a link in there, or some sort of notice or information.
Yeah, sticky messages are important for technical reasons on a live webinar. In Webinar Jam, you're going to have people with different bandwidth and coming on and seeing the Hangout may be blurry, and you tell them if it's blurry, refresh your screen. That might be a sticky message. In here, it's always going to be a clear video because we're only sending them one clear video. So everything's going to be perfect. There'll be no glitches going on here. So you want to use your sticky messages to help the sale. At the end of the webinar, you might also want to just put to get started. With the payment plan, click here, or just another way for them to get started. Click here, and you can put a link to your checkout page. What type of stuff did you put in at the beginning?
So I had a welcome message. So welcome, introduce yourself.
Yes.
And then that went away, and it had what niche are you in. So anytime I wanted to create interactivity, I'd put a sticky message at the top from the admin that asked them the question.
And then you had the chat match up to
and then I had the chat match up to that. And at the end, it was the link to purchase.
Man, if you take the time to figure out how you're going to design the perfect webinar with the interactions, I would actually recommend that when you do your webinar, before you record it, come in and get familiar with feedback flow, sticky messages, the chat, and design, and then say, okay, you know what? I can have my sticky message say, where are you from? And now I know that's at 11 minutes, or 1 minute and 50 seconds. So now I'm going to go into the chat and just put in 30 different countries. So you can create this sense for the user of the most exciting, without your webinar presentation necessarily having to do it. All these social proof elements can be in there to make this an incredible experience.
You can choose to display a number of attendees.
This is very simple, in my opinion. I'll let you explain it in just a second.
it.
The way I would do this is match this up to your authority and the effectiveness of what that event might be. So I actually put mine, I think it's $6,000 or $8,000, 6 or 8,000 units, people, 6 or 8,000 attendees. Is that the way my mind thinks? 6 or 8,000 attendees on during our product launch, because we were getting several 100,000 visitors during that campaign. It's not unreasonable. We've had many of our friends get 8,000 people onto a webinar. So I set it for 8,000. If
I dropped it. I listened to your video where you said we have more than 1,500 people on this, and I'm like, I need to drop this. So I dropped it to 1,600.
Oh, good. Great. Thank you. So now, if you're in a niche that's teaching veterinarians how to do better direct marketing, you probably want to set that to 60 to maybe 130, right? Because you can't make it seem like, wow, I just got on this thing at 11 o'clock at night and there's 700 people in the room. So you use that based on your authority, your reach, and how the event is positioned.
There's an option to display a fixed number of attendees. If you're doing a very small training type thing where you may want to create the experience of having there are only 10 people invited to this training, then you'd want to set it at a fixed number and it be 10 so that you could show that everybody is showing up. If you want to create an experience where there are a lot of people, you want to choose the dynamic attendees. And this is really kind of cool.
Yeah.
It ramps it up. We've modeled what happens in real webinars.
We looked at the statistics of when people show up, when the peak is, and the slow drop-off rate. And we just model that.
Yep, it ramps it off. It modulates it during the webinar to represent people coming and going like happens in a real webinar with a lot of people. So this is really cool.
I'm sure 1 in 1,000 will have a reason why they don't want it. Maybe it's for support or something, right? If you're doing a support webinar, maybe you don't want it to look like you've got 700 people having a problem. So you might want to shut it off there. But if you're doing a selling webinar, I really can't think of a reason why not to use dynamic attendees.
That's right. Live sales alerts. Live sales alerts are sort of cool. If you've got a product that you're selling, you can start saying that people purchased. So you could record purchases of a product that you've had.
What I would do is take actual customers' names,
Yep.
just first names and maybe last initial. Like you, I would say Donna F. from California. I wouldn't necessarily put a city, but just a state or a country. And so look at your past customers and try to keep it to something that happened live.
Right.
Maybe, on the average webinar, I get 10 people that buy after I put the button. These are actual customers. Read those customers off. And what we can do is we can show their name and the name of the product at a specific time. So again, if you know that you have this available to you when you're recording your webinar, you could be like, and we just saw Jim R. just purchased from Austin, Texas. Thank you, Jim. We appreciate that. And then at that time you said it in your recording, about 5 seconds or 10 seconds before that, put it onto the screen. So the people are going to see it first, and then you read it. And then it just, again, that's social proof. That just says if all these people are standing on this line, then, the ice cream must be good here.
And again, this is one of those areas where people are like, isn't that unethical?
Not if you do it the way that we said. What you
Yeah.
want to do is simulate what would have happened when it was live. We don't want to say that there are 30,000 people on the webinar and sit here reading 300 responses, because if that's not something that you do normally, then no. But here's how I can best explain it. When I went to see Tony Robbins at the Meadowlands with Tom Beal, for the first day we got Tony. For the second day, Tony flew out and played a video of him live on stage in front of other people while I was actually still at the Meadowlands with 5,000 or 10,000 people in the room.
Right.
Within 3 minutes, I was just watching Tony. It didn't matter that he was there. The message was the same, but I was getting the feeling of being there with the people. If the message is right and honest and true to the way that you do it live, then we don't want you to do this to mislead people. We don't want you to be like, wow, 30 sales just came in the last 10 seconds. We don't want you to do that. We want you to simulate what you do in a live webinar.
And if you're uncomfortable with any of it, just
Don't
don't
use
do
that
it.
feature.
It works just great without most of these features, which is the cool thing about this product. And this allows you to just display social media share buttons on your live page. So if you want
If it's a sale webinar, use it. If it's a paid webinar that people paid for access, shut them off.
Exactly.
That's it. And what that means is they'll see a Facebook and a Twitter button, and they can share, and people can come and get on your event while it's happening. They can register and go through a simulated event. I'm getting confused because it does its job so well. I'm thinking
right.
that they're watching it live.
Well, because they are.
They
Because they
are.
are live.
Yes.
And often moderators are
Yeah.
live. The experience is still a live one, even if it's all pre-recorded.
Yeah.
And here's where you can enable your replay. I recommend always enabling the webinar replay page. It just stops people from seeing this webinar has ended page if they show up a little bit later.
Yeah, I
you
would probably
forget
use
to
it
redirect.
less in my marketing emails. Now that you have Everwebinar, I would just say we're doing an encore. And it's starting soon, and let them just see that it's starting in 11 minutes with a just in time, and get because we know that replays have higher bounds. And then you have the replay page just because, and you could maybe at the end of the campaign, you're just like, okay, here's the replay, because you got to get a replay out.
We even do that in our notifications. We set up the first couple right after webinars, and we don't say replay. We actually say it's an encore presentation. We send them back to the registration page. We take out the replay link, send them back to the registration page for the encore.
In fact, even in like Webinar Jam, when you like set up the replay, if you've imported this thing into an Everwebinar, I would just change the custom URL to the Evergreen Everwebinar.
Absolutely, me too.
I think we actually did that.
Yes. I can't think of a reason why someone would want to disable this, honestly.
Here's the only reason why. If you're hardcore Frank Kern or the guys from the two brothers, they have a #1 best-selling book company. They tell people you have to attend live because there's not going to be a replay. In that case, if your ethics say that you got to be there live because we're not having a replay, then you live honest to that message and you don't allow people to see a replay.
Good point. All right.
Bill and
You
Steve
can-
Harrison. That's who.
There you go. You can choose to set an expiration for the replay. So if you want to create some scarcity in terms of the time, I guess that's urgency, in terms of the time people have to be able to watch the replay, you can make it expire within a certain number of hours
And that
after
works
the
well.
live session.
Yeah, you need to watch this now because it's coming down tomorrow at midnight.
And now keep in mind, this is going to be after the live session that they registered for.
So it's
So-
perpetuating. It's 24 hours after the live session they registered for. And our system takes care of all that.
You can allow users to send questions from the replay page.
This
we-
is a love-hate relationship I
It
have with this
is.
feature. I just got to be honest with you guys. That's why I just love the Everwebinar Encore as your replay, because you got your moderators in there talking with people. The thing that you get here, and it's probably a design of our box where people think it's their chat, because
Yes.
in a replay there's no chat. So when they see where are you from, they type in Austin, Texas into the questions box and hit send. So what's happening is, warning, if you put your email address there, you may not be getting just questions. You may be getting 70 emails that say, Sydney, Australia, can't wait to get started. Yes. Does this work on a Mac, right? Well, that one you want, right?
That
But
one is-
you may just be getting them answering what niche are you in, and they think it's the chat. So if you're going to use it, don't use your regular support email address so it doesn't create tickets. Don't use your personal email address. Set up a special email address, like call it webinar jam or webinar support at gmail.com, and then just have somebody go through that, and they'll probably just see a lot of yeses and I'm from France and all that, and find the real questions out of there.
Yep. We actually send it to our support desk, and it goes in such a way that it doesn't create a ticket to the customer, because what it does is it triggers an email to whatever email address you use. It won't send a ticket to the customers. The customer isn't getting the automatic experience of having a ticket come in, because it creates it basically creates a ticket to the Webinar Jam notification system. So it just goes into a black hole, basically. But it gives the support staff an opportunity to take a look at it and find real questions and respond to them.
Okay, great.
So yeah, our support team actually goes through and just deletes and resolves anything that's not a real question, but then responds to the customer for a real question. So it allows us to have some of that pre-sale activity with the customer and communication with the customer.
We're going to be, actually, I spoke with Hector about making that section where it says leave a question for support, and it'll open up a light box. It'll have their name, and then like the button is going to say send email.
That's great. That'll be a little
and then it'll
clearer.
refresh and say someone will get back to you in 24 hours. So it completely eliminates them thinking they're using the chat.
Awesome. And again, you have your social media buttons here if you want social media on the replay page.
Same thing. Yep.
Monetization. This tab allows you to charge for the webinar and also track sales.
I don't know many people that are doing paid webinars these days. There is a strategy. There are a lot of strategies. The reverse funnel method by Dagan Smith and Russell Bunchen, they spoke about it. If you ever want to do paid webinars, just click here, change it from free to paid. You fill out this information where your checkout page is, and we basically lock them from registering until they pay. That's all. And it's there for you if you need. 99.9% of you are going to be using it free. I've never done a paid webinar before, so.
Yeah, some people are using this to sell content. So we're getting a number of customers that are
That's
doing
a pretty.
that to sell.
It's basically. It's becoming like its own VSL. Yeah.
Exactly.
Like you can have your video on your registration page and saying, "Hey, I'm doing a webinar that all this week."
That's exactly right.
And if you're interested, you can. This is what you're going to learn for just $7. You can get started. And now you're qualifying your customers.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm not telling you not to do it. I'm just saying that check this out more in detail if you happen to be somebody that's doing paid. We're there for you. This, I think, is an underused feature
For sure.
For our system. It's so simple. Just if you're setting up your products and your buttons, simply give it a description and a goal value, and then we're going to give you a snippet of code that you put on your thank you page, on your WordPress, on your ClickFunnels, lead pages, wherever the customer pays and then returns from PayPal or your shopping cart that says, thank you, check your email. We give you a snippet of code that you put there, and that's how we can track your sales. So your analytics can actually tell you what your attendees are worth.
That's right. So, and any product, any offer that you've put in will show up in this drop down.
So you set a goal value. So it's not perfect. If you have payment plans, some of your products might be $9.97 or 2 payments of $4.97. You just set the goal value at 1,000.
That's it. And it basically reads cookies. If somebody's been on your live webinar and then they're also on that page where you've put that little code in, it'll read that code and let us know, talk to the system and say there's been a sale. And here is the purpose of this. Do you run an affiliate program? This is for our webinars on demand section. So when you're on the webinar directory, webinars on demand, there's an opportunity for people to sign up and be your affiliate for that webinar. And when you want to do that, you could link to your affiliate page here, and it just provides a link to the affiliate program.
Yeah,
URL.
if you go to webinarjam.com, click on video webinars on demand, you'll see that some of the webinars don't have an affiliate link underneath them.
That's right.
Some of them do, and the ones that do are people that put a link to their affiliate program there. Because if it's a selling webinar, especially an evergreen one, if people are there and say, man, this webinar for this software looks great, I want to tell my list about it, they're not going to if they can't get paid. So if you have a little link where they can get welcome with, hey, join our program, we pay 50% of our $400 sale, blah, blah, blah. And then they'll join and they'll just go promote your webinar for you.
And that's it. Step 10 is finishing up the webinar. Now you've gone through the whole webinar. We've probably spent an hour talking about it and talking through all the system.
Probably 2 hours.
Is it 2 hours?
I don't, maybe even more. I don't
we have
know.
a lot to say.
Well, yeah, and obviously, guys, over here in my webinars, when you're done, you will then. We always don't check this because we need this for our videos. What you will see here is the tracking codes if that we told you for your product. You will get that there to put on your page. Advanced here. This is for one-click registration if you want to use that in your emails. This is when we call it go live, but essentially this is where you get your link to promote your webinar, your replays, schedules. You choose which one and you'll get a link for that as well. Log into the live chat. This is important. Depending on your presenters, remember Donna said we had 10. Each presenter will get their own link, and when they click on this, I don't know what we'll get here, but let's see. They can respond to chat in here. They'll see their chat and questions come in here. Okay, so they can just leave that browser open all day. We probably got to add like a little ping notification or something like that.
I think we do, especially for long webinars that we've had.
Yeah, and if we're doing them for 24, where they're perpetuating for our customers, so to let their staff know.
Yep.
Test your webinar. This will allow you to see what your webinar looks like. This is the registration link.
This is a holdover from Webinar Jam. Frankly, there's no need to have the test webinar, test your webinar in Everwebinar.
Well, the only thing that I do like, what I would recommend to you guys is if you want to see what your webinar looks like live, it's the emergency link. We don't have we have to put something here that says live, because if you're setting it to play every Tuesday and every Thursday, and you're building this on a Sunday, you're not going to be able to see your webinar for 3 days. You're going to have to deal with a countdown timer. So what I wanted to show you is here, test your webinar.
But it's also in the live though.
Oh yeah, it's the same thing here. Yeah, we don't need to test.
We don't need to
test. I see
for
your
our
point.
webinar.
Yeah, because you're not going into a Hangout to test your audio. So what Donna is saying is just this emergency link. Just click that or just click open, and you're going to get to see what the webinar looks like. You don't have to go through the registration process or anything.
Yeah,
or
bypasses
just enter your
the
name.
registration page.
Yeah, I think you just got to log in with your name and email.
Your name and email. If you haven't logged in for a webinar before, the system automatically sees that you've not logged in for their webinar and asks you for your name and email. This is no matter what page you use. So if you go to a live page, if you go to a registration page, if you go to the now page, the replay page, and you've not registered for that webinar, you're going to be asked for your name and email address again.
Yeah.
That's our way of protecting you against link sharing.
Yeah, exactly. And guys, you've got great training, so make sure, we've got lots of different stuff that we've given you so that you can learn how to do webinars. And we've got lots of videos to show you how you can read the analytics in your webinars. This webinar went long enough, and we don't want to keep you for another 20 minutes going over analytics for stuff we have videos for. But this deep dive was really informative. I had a lot of fun high-fiving Donna over here. And so that's it, guys. We hope you enjoyed it. If you did, type yes in the chat. No, just kidding. And we'll see you in the next training session. Bye-bye. All right. That's a huge file.